Okay, so welcome to our 10th episode of Puro Laro. So we do have an interesting topic today, and we're gonna talk about the people behind all these games that we're playing, lahat ng nilalaro natin. Sino ba gumagawa nito? Ano ba ito? Lumilitaw na lang ba sa mga stores natin and all that? Sino ba gumagawa nito? Syempre, some of you guys might know that it's the developers that are responsible. Nagsimula ito sa isang code and then we get to play it. So we're gonna talk about in this episode kung ano ang buhay ng isang developer. Our guest is the co-founder and creative director of Muramasa Games. They're currently working on a game right now which is Save the World, The Misadventures of Luis and Joanna. So if you guys haven't seen it, just go ahead and go to their Facebook page, which is Muramasa Games, and you learn about everything. But of course, since our guest today will also talk about it, so let me welcome here Iggy.
Hey, thank you for having me, Jamie, John.
All right, so let's start with how did you get into this? Because this is, you said that you're co-founder and creative director. So paano mo naisip to? I mean, there have been some or very few developers and at the same time like companies that are based in the Philippines. Pagdating, original Pinoy and all that. So how did you start this? Is this original Pinoy Muramasa game? Is this Filipino owned or anything like that? So yeah, tell me more about it.
Yeah, well, so I have a long history in gaming. You might be hearing my daughter in the background. Sorry about that.
That's fine. That's fine.
I actually started working for Level Up back in 2009,
Wow, okay.
2008, sorry. And I started out as the advergaming director for Level Up Philippines. And then a year after that, I was promoted to content acquisition director or business development director. So I was responsible for going to the different conferences, different shows, looking for games, evaluating them to see if they would be a fit for the Philippine market. So I guess you could say during that stint, I was very much involved with, seeing what makes a game work, what makes people want to play a game. And at the same time, I was also very much involved in discussions with developers from Korea, China, even the US. And I had first-hand knowledge of how they work, development schedules, processes. So I guess throughout the close to 6 years that I was working with Level Up, I had a very good understanding of the game business. Now, the thing is, most guys that set up studios, especially here in the Philippines, they're usually, they have a developer on board or they have somebody who's familiar with coding and art. I was neither. I actually, honestly, until now, the last thing I was able to code was a Flash microsite back when I was still working for Yehay.
Tagal na lang na.
More than a decade ago. Yeah. So, and I was already at an age where I thought, oh my God, do I have to learn Unity all over again just to be able to do this? So because unlike most studios in the Philippines that start out with a bunch of guys who have coding and art experience, I came in because I had a lot of experience on the business side of the game industry. So that allowed me to actually stay on top and really oversee the production side. And we just hired a team of dev and art people that would put the game together for us. And because of that, we were able to actually save on a bunch of costs and let us produce the game faster. We had an idea we wanted to reach. We said, okay, at this point, dapat ganito na yung game. We were able to do that. So because me and my business partner, Erwin, he's also Filipino. We're both Filipino. So this is a wholly Filipino-owned company. We decided to, test our luck, see what would happen now that we have a working prototype. And true enough, we went to GDC in San Francisco back in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. We actually got some pretty good traction while we were there. I was able to talk to some indie game developers. They saw the prototype and they all thought, wow, you guys are headed in the right direction. The game that you're building is actually in a niche or genre that isn't crowded. So there is an opportunity for you to do well. Basically, all of that is because we did our homework because of all the business back end that I had experience in. Unfortunately for us, we got to the point where, okay, all of the people that wanted to sign us, either a publisher or an investor, said, okay, you're missing a little bit of this and that. Come back to us when you have improved on those little things, right? So we had an investor who was already coming on board, plus a bunch of other people that we were talking to. That's when things started becoming troublesome for us. We ran out of runway money. That's runway money for a startup is the money that you start with. See how far you can go, right? So we were already able to come up with a working prototype. You can actually download the game now and play the first level. But a lot of the polish was still missing. The things that I wanted to make it work. So because we didn't have any more funding, and the investor that was supposed to come in at the start suddenly said, you know what, we're gonna have to wait because my money is still tied up in another investment. My business partner and I had to shell out our own money, which eventually also ran out. So after about 4 to 5 months of development, when we finally got to this point, we were short by maybe a few more weeks or a month of development. And then we could have presented the game to a publisher, or we could have gone to Kickstarter already. So that's where we are right now. We shelved the game for a bit, and we're still accumulating the rest of the money that will allow us to complete the development, at least until we get to a more comfortable version of the game that can get us additional funding or a proper Kickstarter backing.
Okay. So wow, that's good information, particularly on your background and also dun sa state ng game nyo ngayon from Muramasa. So I mean, since you said it's like shelved for now, okay, until you get the funding and all. Pero let me just ask, how many people are working on this game right now? How many are you guys in the company itself?
So when Muramasa was when we were at our peak in development, we had 2 developers and a team of 3 artists. And everyone was outsourced except for the one developer. The one developer was in-house. My business partner does a little bit of development, but he's not that familiar with Unity. So we really got a senior developer who was very, very experienced in Unity. And we got a junior to help us, or to be the trainee, quote unquote, so that the senior can teach him, and then he'd be the one to pick up the slack or improve on the game as we progressed. My responsibility was mainly the story and the direction of the game. And our team is actually, we got another studio to help us, another game dev studio, the guys from Chris Studio, that's the name of the studio. And they also have some games that were already greenlit and published on Steam.
Okay, so nag-outsource na rin kayo pala neto.
Yeah.
Just to get, okay. All right,
because,
so
it would have been more expensive to actually hire our own. And then you have to get them their own machines. If you wanted to do it right, you have to incorporate, right? So we did incorporation stuff already, and if we wanted to get our own people, we wouldn't had to get their own PCs. Oh my god.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
So it was pretty expensive.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I'm just interested in this because some of our listeners, or even most of our listeners, would have no idea on like what are the going ons under a game development team or even a publishing team. So, I mean, on your end, how many, let's say, partitions or departments do you guys have? So, meron kayong development team, right? So, and you guys have like let's just call it like an art department kasi meron kang like 3 artists and all that. So, and you said you're making the story. Any other department that is needed to actually make a game, since you are, what do you call this? You're very much experienced when it comes to your development.
Okay, so
Sa background.
here's a little thing that I learned over the years. After my stint in Level Up, I actually joined Play Lab Games, which is a mobile game development studio, and they have they have an arm that is based here in Metro Manila. And one thing I learned is that sure, you can have your dev and your art side, but a lot of the game also depends on your marketing and user acquisition, especially to mobile.
Okay.
Actually, there are a bunch of studios right now that are 1 or 2 men. Sorry, 2 person. 1 person, 2 person studio. And that is totally fine. But the thing that you have to understand is if you are a developer or if you are an artist, you also have to learn how to do the marketing and user acquisition for your game. Otherwise, if you create a game, even if it's a great game, and you put it up on the store, if you have no idea how to do the marketing, no idea how to do, the Facebook marketing, the user acquisition, and all of that, then there's a very small chance of your game becoming successful. Because you have to acquire users, you have to advertise your game. That's really the nature of it. I mean, there are over 500 games launched on the store every day. How can you compete with that?
Correct.
Right? So if you wanted to go into mobile games, even on Steam, if you wanted to go into Steam, you have to figure out a way to be able to market your game. So to answer your question, I guess it will be essential to have a dev and an art team in your studio, yes. But you really need to invest in marketing. You don't have to do it yourself. You can actually work with a different agency or a group that can help you market your game. But you can't not get into that.
Okay.
If you really want your game to be successful, you have to be able to work with that. One of the other solutions that some of the indie studios from the Philippines have done is, and this one guy, he's a one-man studio. He's created a bunch of games already. A couple of his games are already on Steam. He works with a publisher, and he lets the publisher take care of the marketing and all of that for him. What's important is he just keeps coming up with the game. I mean, that's great and all, but the downside of working with the publisher is, of course, you're sharing your revenues with somebody. But at the very least, right, you're making money, as opposed to if you wanted to do it on your own and you didn't market your game, the chances of your game making money at all is pretty slim. So, again, to recap, just to answer your question, it's important to have, of course, your dev and your art, but you have to invest in marketing.
So sa tingin mo, ito yung usual problems pagdating sa game. Like you said, you can't have like the greatest game ever if nobody knows about it, right? So, so pagdating doon, ito ba yung usual issues other than, of course, the money? Let's say you have the money and all that. So marketing the game is also one. Kasi there will be publishers who would be interested in the kind of game that you have. But where do you draw the line when it comes to like creative control. Kasi syempre, publisher na sila. We're gonna put up some money here for your marketing. We're also gonna give you some money if you guys ever need it to just continue this. May mga, katulad niya, you also mentioned before that there was already an investor interested, pero they want you to do something first about the game because of certain, may certain requests sila, then come back to us. So, ito ba yung parang tipping point of the game actually being made or come out? Of course, the game is made, pero yung tipping point kasi merong mga nagsasacrifice ng creative control, di ba?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In all honesty, if you were to work with a publisher, a lot of these publishers will give you advice. Right? Okay, they'll see your game and they'll say, okay, we love your game, but this thing will probably not work because we've seen other games, etc., etc.
Okay.
So the thing that you have to take away when you're working with a publisher is that they have the experience. Right? They know what they're talking about. And of course, they'll also be investing in you. Like, they'll be shelling out money to help you finish your game. Usually that's the case. So it would be advisable for them, of course, to look after the investment. If they see that, okay, the direction you're heading is probably not going to work, they'll definitely call you out, especially publishers from the US. They'll definitely talk to you about stuff like that. But on the one hand, there are also publishers out there who are really very, very open about, okay, we believe in your project, your vision. Go ahead, run with it. We'll take care of the rest when you guys should go. But more often than not, there are schedules that you have to follow, because that's the reality of game publishing. In order for a publisher to be profitable, they have to release games at particular intervals, right? I can't keep saying to a publisher, if ever I work with a publisher, I said, no, my game's not yet ready. Can you give us another couple of weeks or months?
Okay. So let's delve into that. Yung pagdating sa a game being ready, because we've seen a lot of games not being ready, diba? So I think the best example is No Man's Sky, diba? So I think ngayon lang talaga siya makikita namin seeing that this is the game that should have come out a few years ago. So now, where do you guys, or who decides on that? Kasi ikaw, you're head of the games. Of course, you have the decision when you think it's ready. How do you set how does a game go from like pre-alpha, alpha state, tapos beta, tapos yun. So who decides that? Kasi I mean, it's also curious to me kung parang who decides when it's ready? Kasi sometimes they show pre-alpha demo is like, pero ang ganda na nung game eh.
Yeah,
diba?
Exactly.
So parang ano pa ba yung what goes into it? Is it just basically timelines? Or is it really a specific standard state pagdating sa paggagawa ng games? Ano ba to?
I'm a firm believer in feature complete. That is what I talk about when I say a game's ready.
Okay.
When I've been, I'm a Steam gamer through and through. I have a shit ton of games. Sorry, can I say shit?
That's okay. That's okay. That's fine.
I have a shit ton of games on Steam that I haven't touched yet, but I keep buying them because they're on sale or stupid Steam Christmas sale and stuff like that. But mainly because I also like to explore. I like to see what works. What makes the game tick. I like to read the reviews. I like to see what they're saying about the game. And one thing I've noticed is the games that have been successful are, one, they have a plan. They know exactly what they want this game to be on launch, and they also have a content plan down the line. It's not usually, okay, when I finish this game, it's there in the world, and then I'll leave it alone. No way. If you really want your game to be more successful, you have a goal for, okay, on launch it's going to be like this, but after 3 to 6 months I want to launch an add-on like this. You call it DLC, call it a patch, call whatever you want, it's basically content that keeps people wanting to play your game. And a lot of the indie games that I've seen are actually doing that now, and it works. And in fact, what we wanted to do with our game Sana was that if we had gone to Kickstarter and we had reached a particular goal, I would have actually been okay to say now, okay, if we reach this goal, all DLCs in the future will be free. That would have been cool, and I really think. And for me, it's because I already had a plan for what would be the game at launch, what would be the next update or the next feature, and so on and so forth. So basically, we had the plan for how the game would look like, plus 2 years after that. Right. So for people who want to work with a publisher and you want to make sure that you have a feature ready, a feature complete quote unquote game, you have to plan it out from the beginning. So when you sit down with your devs and you sit down with your art, okay guys, when we launch this game has to be this. It has to have 10 levels, 20 bosses, 2,000 items, etc. etc. So yun yung mark mo, yun yung goal post mo. Ito na when we reach this point, dapat pwede na tayo mag-launch. And you can always talk to a publisher about that. Okay, our goal, Mr. Publisher, is that we want this game to have 10 levels, 20 bosses, 2,000 items, etc. And then he's going to say, okay, we're going to launch at this date. Can you commit your 10 levels, 20 bosses, 2,000 items at that date? And that's when you go back and say, yeah, we can do it. Or no, we can.
Okay.
So, dun na yung give and take, I guess. But yun, again, to go back to your question, it's really up to you as a game designer, game developer, to say what would be your game upon launch, right? Kasi for most guys, you're right eh. Some guys who launch in alpha, it's already a pretty great game. Parang pwede mo i-launch yan eh, you know? But if you look at the developer's website and their Trello and whatever, you see that, oh wow, they have a plan, they have a content pipeline, they have things that they want to launch. Some things get kicked off, sure, but some things get added, and every so often there's a new patch, and we get closer and closer to the launch product, right? I mean, I'm glad that you brought up No Man's Sky. I mean, I was playing it before we started, and I played it when it first came out, and the thing about this game in particular is because the developers promised certain features, right? They said when we launch this game, it'll have this, and then when they launched and it didn't have it, a lot of people were disappointed. So that's the other thing that you have to manage. If you market your game and you say that your game is going to be this, and then on launch it's not that, then obviously you had to do, you had to cut corners to get to that, just to launch. So that's the downside of wanting to work with a schedule and a publisher and all that. It's because wala eh, kailangan talaga eh, right?
Sige, John, go.
Too bad. Yeah, sorry, John.
No problem. So you mean in the case of No Man's Sky, the developers of No Man's Sky were able to schedule, and the publisher wants them to publish already?
I mean, I honestly don't know what really happened. I mean, not privy to their discussion with the publisher, but it's safe to assume that they were forced to launch at the time when they shouldn't have launched. Whether it was by their decision or by publisher's decision, I really don't know. But the fact of the matter is, they promised something at launch and didn't deliver. And for a lot of people, especially on the indie space, that's a no-no, right? So if you really want to come up with a great game, you have to plan it out ahead. Ano ba yung kaya namin tapusin sa schedule, sa delivery, sa deadline, sa launch date? Kasi if you overpromise and under-deliver, it's as good as making a bad game, right? So what happened was, a lot of people bought the game, played it, and then humingi ng refund. So, ganun din. So, sayang lang yung trabaho mo na I imagine how many hours and years they spent developing. I mean, now honestly, it's a great game now. I mean, I had hats off to these guys. They really stuck with it and made it happen. But yeah, the damage had been done. So a lot of the people who wanted in on it already said, "Nah, I don't want to try that."
In your experience, have you ever encountered publishers that are too pushy?
Oh yeah, oh hell yeah. I used to work for Level Up. I'm sorry to say, but we were a publisher and we were very pushy. Because, I mean, let's face it. If you're working with a developer and they say, "Okay, my game is going to be this, all right? I'm going to do this for you, so that if you launch in your country, in the Philippines, you're going to make this much money." And then we tell them, "Okay, sure, let's do it." And then the time comes that we're running the game, and then the things that they promised they're not doing. They'll be like, "Come on, man. I mean, come on. We're in this together. You know, we invested in you. We paid for your license fee, and you guys gave us the game, launching it here in the country, and then you're not going to help us out." The guy's like, it's a hassle, right? So instead of the game becoming much better than this or making money the way you intended it to, it ends up being dead in the water. Right? It's unfortunately it's happened quite a few times with some of the titles that we released. I mean, I can probably say this now because it's been more than a decade. Well, not more than a decade. More than 6 years since I left Level Up. And Level Up Philippines is already under AsiaSoft, right? It's like Play Park now. So some of the games that we launched back then, the reason why they didn't become successful was because the developer said, fuck it, I don't want to work with you guys. It's also not their fault, mind you. It's mainly because during that time, a lot of MMORPGs were already declining. People were still playing Ragnarok, but not as much as before. And if you brought in new games, it's like, do I stick with my legacy game, RF Online or Ragnarok, or do I want to play these new games? So what happened was, because the new games weren't doing as well as we had hoped, the developer was like, because you guys aren't making money, I don't want to waste time supporting you guys. I don't want to waste time helping you. So it became a chicken and egg problem. Where the developer wouldn't help you out because the market wasn't picking up. At the same time, you feel that if you help me, I'm pretty sure the market will pick up. You know what I'm saying? So parang chicken and egg. It was really difficult because first and foremost, we were competing already at that stage with mobile games and social games. That Facebook gaming was pretty big at that time. I remember. So it was, and of course, the other problem was because the Philippines is an English-speaking market. If a game was released either in the US, globally, or Southeast Asia, and accessible in the Philippines, so competition ng Philippines yun. So a Ragnarok Philippine server, for example, would be competing against Ragnarok Southeast Asia or Ragnarok US, or you know what I'm saying?
Mahirap nga naman yun.
So mahirap talaga. So after a while, it just didn't make sense to launch new MMOs in the Philippines.
Okay, so usually it's the publisher's decision on tulad na to. I mean, Level Up Games has a history of releasing all these childhood games, as we call it, na parang kinalakihan na talaga ng mga Pilipino, di ba?
Oh,
so yung mga Flife, di ba, yung RF Online, Ragnarok, ano pa ba?
Run Online, dating
Run Online, di ba? Oo.
Sila, yeah.
So eto yung question ko, kasi these guys, I mean, Level Up Games usually like do top-ups versus subscriptions. Pero what is usually the motivation for a publisher to insert or to gain creative control to the point where yung game parang nagiging pay to win na? sabihin, parang it's just a business now. So, hindi na siya yung parang usual na it's an art, it's a ganyan. So, ano yung tipping point ng isang does it happen from the start where like a certain studio binigay ito sa isang publisher and then dun na nasulat yung kontrata na hindi, sige, kailangan yung insert tong pay to win aspect? Or does it happen along the line? Pag nakita nila na parang, dami naman kumikita naman yung game nyo so pwede ba ilagay na ito para mas marami pang perang kitain? So, where does the publisher draw the line?
Okay, so your question is a little bit difficult to answer, mainly because we're talking about the free-to-play space. Well, yeah, I'm both. It's because we're talking about the free-to-play space.
Oo, yun lang. Kasi we talked about it previously. Yung most of yung katulad yan, mga Flife and all that, let's just talk hypothetically na parang, sabihin natin, yung naging issue ngayon sa games industry, naging issue noon, like the 2010s, di ba? Or 2000s.
Yeah.
So, kasi matagal na yung mga games ng RF and all that, di ba? So, iba high school pa, iba college nila na experience and all that. What if that happened then? What do you think would be the motivation to like make RF online like not only kasi free to play naman to mga to. So, what would make it like a pay to win aspect na parang nabibili na yung items online para lang lumas yung isang kasi yung right now it's being frowned upon di ba? So
okay, theoretically speaking kasi you're not supposed to allow play to win because obviously it becomes, as the colloquial term, pera-pera ang labanan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which shouldn't be the case.
Mm-hmm.
But see, that's the whole double-edged sword of free-to-play games. Take for example mobile games. Mobile games are mostly free, right? And you can play the game until you run out of energy. Case in point, a Clash of Clans, which became very big. And then there are certain things that you can power up, but you have to wait an hour, you have to wait 2 hours. Unless you spend a little bit of money, then you can get energy again. Then you don't have to wait an hour, 2 hours. Then obviously, you're now getting an advantage over people who don't want to spend, right? So, in truth, that is one of the reasons why free-to-play gaming is being frowned upon. Kasi, pucha, kung ganun pa rin yung labanan, hindi tapunan ko ng pera yung game mo, panalo na ako. Which is why I am very much excited about people who are still in free-to-play. But they're making it so that there is a balance to it. There is no way that even if you spend $1 million that you will one-up somebody who is very skilled, right? Look at games like League of Legends, for example, where they were really working on the balance to make sure that you can't buy items that will make you more powerful in the game, right? There was a time they had those gems or add-ons, right? And then people were becoming more powerful because of those things. You wanted to keep the balance. Or Fortnite, for example, you can only buy cosmetic items, right? But look at mo, ganda ng cosmetic item mo. But, kung bobo kang player, bobo ka pa rin. Right?
Ito yan.
So, that's where I guess that the line should be drawn. If an unfair advantage is already being afforded to a player who is paying, then you're already ruining the game experience for everyone. So that's really what you have to look out for. And then there's another call out that I have to mention. A lot of people who make games, they just want to build the game and say, ito na, pag nagawa na siya, people can play it. And then they'll think about the monetization as an afterthought. Or after the game is built, saka lang naisip, paano kikita ng pera? You shouldn't do that. Dapat sa simula pa lang, when you're building your game mechanics, your core loop, ika nga, nakapasok na dun yung monetization, your revenue model mo. Especially if you're doing free-to-play. Like, for example, that energy component, the energy mechanic in free-to-play games, that is part of the core loop of the game. Uh, if if Candy Crush had been free all throughout with no hearts or lives, then they wouldn't have made money. But because they made it so that at a certain point you can't, you're so frustrated and you want to finish that last level, you just have to spend $1 to get that extra life or extra 5 moves to finish the level. Diba? They made it so that that they built the game in that way para talagang mapagastos yung player. But at the same time, hindi siya unfair. Just because we buy it ako, nag-advance ako, hindi. It's still very tricky. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's really difficult to talk about play to win, quote unquote, in free to play, because the danger is there. The very real danger of you just saying, okay, if you buy this, I'll give you all of this. The very real danger is there. That's why the safest route for a lot of people now for their games is a lot of the things that you can buy are mainly cosmetic items, lalo na pag multiplayer
so,
games.
Pag nilagyan mo na ng gaming component,
so
say, pag sinuot mo tong item na to or armor na to, meron kang bibilis kang mag-farm or whatever. So, yun na yung medyo, out of line na, no, para sa'yo.
Which is why I thought from the very beginning, when my partner and I started the studio, we were deciding, do we go create free-to-play mobile games? Or do we go on Steam and sell the game at the premium? Sabi ko, we can do the free-to-play, sure. But it's a hard burden to carry. It's also hard to make money. If you have a studio that you want to sustain, and then you launch free-to-play games on mobile, if you don't also spend a lot of money to acquire users in marketing, we'll eventually not have enough money to keep our studio afloat. Whereas I said, okay, if we go on Steam instead, we sell our game for what? Say $15, which is the average of a game of this size, right? If we only sell 10,000 to 20,000 copies, we'll be fine. We would have made a lot of money already and still keep the studio afloat for a year. So we actually made the conscious decision that it would be better if we went to Steam kasi mas masusustain natin yung business. Tapos wala pa yung danger of going into that free-to-play pit. If we sell the game at the premium, we'll give everything. We'll give all of the features. Wala ka nang kailangan idagdag na bayad. Kung siya mag-enjoy ka pa.
Okay, John, may question ka. Go.
Would you say, kasi diba there's the Western way of doing games, tapos there's the Asian way na parang grindy, and kasi na-mention ata from previous episodes na when it comes to yung games lalo na inside China, it's medyo pumapasok na yung pay to win and they don't mind, but when you make that in the Western culture or Western it's frowned upon, diba? Would you say yung Philippine market is what, more of a Western audience or a Asian audience?
I would have to say after several years of looking at this, we are very much like a hybrid. Okay, let me explain. When I was to level up now, we were evaluating a lot of Chinese games, Chinese MMOs, and even browser games. Napansin talaga namin na yes, there's a lot of grind involved, but they also made it so that the more money you spend, the more we reward you. In fact, the Chinese MMOs that we looked at, Chinese browser MMOs that we were looking at, they had VIP levels. So VIP 1 up to VIP 10, meaning the more you spend for the game, the higher VIP level, the higher your benefits, like 1,000% XP bonus, no rest time, etc., etc. So talagang gahaman, pre. Gahaman yung pay to. But at the same time, we noticed that ang Pinoy kasi, hindi gagastos yan sa online games pa. As much as possible, kung libre yan. They will not spend for their own products. I remember for a very long time, the ARPU for Philippines was around $3 to $5 for casual games. That's a whole 100% lower than the rest of the region, the rest of the market. Sobrang kuripot ang Filipino players. But if they do spend for their games, yung mga whales ng level ng Philippine market, sobrang exaggerated naman yung values nila. May mga nagbabagsak ng 20,000 sa isang bilihan sa Ragnarok. May mga ganun. So I was like,
wow, 20,000?
So how do we manage? Maliit yun. Maliit na yun. So we were like, how do we manage that? So it was pretty obvious that you have to attract the free-to-play market, right? The free players, because they're the ones who keep the game populated. They're the ones, sila yung nagbababad 24/7. Yung may mga pilot, grind, pinapa-level yung character. But they also have, minsan, kadalasan may guildmates silang kasama na siya yung mayaman, siya yung nagbibili ng power-ups para sa guild, siya yung magpapasal, okay, may ano tayo, may guild wars tayo sa weekend. Ito, loadan ko kayo ng tigli 500. Kuha kayo ng mga XP up, gano'n. So, magbabasag tayo ng item. Ito, may nang magbasag. Gano'n eh. So, talagang it really pays to cater to the free play market. Kasi sila talaga yung nagbababad. From what we've seen talaga, the Philippines we're very much a hybrid of that. There are the guys who love to grind and really spend hours on end just to get up in the game, while there are players who are very much like the Asian, Chinese players na, pwede ko lang bayaran na natin para angat na tayo agad kasi kailangan
so, hybrid pala tayo.
Or wala na akong oras mag-grind. Bibili na lang ako ng high-level account.
Alam mo naman ang ano natin, ang quote ng mga Pilipino, di ba? Kung ayaw gumastos, puso, di ba? Puso eh.
So, it's it's funny because even if PUBG is a paid game, you still see a lot of people on the PUBG forums or Facebook groups asking if they can get a free account or a free game. Tatanong sila, saan ba pwedeng bumili ng mas mura na PUBG? O may nagbibenta ba dyan ng PUBG 100 lang, 200 lang, gano'n.
Oo, mga accounts eh.
Hindi nila afford pero gusto nilang maglaro eh. They're free players you can't fault them for not having the finances to fund their gaming habit. Gusto nila maglaro. So,
tsaka ano rin eh, like we talked about last episode, I think it's not only yung finances, kasi usually Western and even yung mga higher Asian countries like Japan, Korea, China, Singapore, yan, they have the means kasi they have easy access to like credit cards and all that. Kumbaga parang normal na sa culture nila, di ba? Sa Pilipinas kasi, and just a shout out again to your former company, one of the companies that actually gave that power to the people is Level Up Games. Ibig sabihin, malaking bagay dati yung mga top-up eh. Kahit yung mga load naman 10 ng 50 ng 50 kasi maglalaro akong Ragnarok. I mean, yung mga ganun, because we don't, yun nga kasi yung problema kasi the Philippine market doesn't have the means to actually pay for that. Wala tayong, kumbaga hindi siya kasing dali sa pagbayad ng Meralco.
Yeah,
diba?
Yeah.
Right now, meron ngayong mga very minimal, I think Level Up Games is still part of that, na let's say 7-Eleven pwede mo bayaran for a small amount of money, pero yun nga, yung means to actually pay for that, because generally the Filipino likes to handle things in cash. Bihira tayo, ay credit card, teka lang, di ba? Ilag tayo kasi yung culture natin does not allow that, yung magbayad through credit cards and all that. So, di ba? Tapos minsan nga pag kahit may credit card yan, tanong, pwede ko i-cancel? Kasi, di ba? Kasi ayokong magduloy-tuloy, di ba? Pero they don't know kasi nga, hindi nga ni-ingrained sa culture natin na parang mas madali kapag you use these means sa mga banks and all that, tapos hindi rin naman agreeable yung mga credit lines ng mga tao kasi nga we mostly handle cash, bihira tayo umutang. You only see that when you like upwards your 30s and up, or like 25 years old and up, na meron ka ng trabaho and you can actually afford a credit card and all that. So yung mga with yung mga bata, which is like what 15 to like 25 years old, yun yung sagsaga na addict sila sa games. Wala silang means to pay for that, di ba? So doon mo makita yung sobrang daming free to play.
Which brings me to my next point about building your game. When you build your game, don't think na gusto ko mag-launch sa Philippines tama kayo, walang pera mga Pilipino para bilhin yung game mo.
Oo
Sadly, that's the truth. So when we were building our game, our goal really was to launch it globally. And that's why we chose Steam as the platform. Kasi if you just target a Philippine market, ang laki na kagad ng hurdle yung payments, mahirap yung tao bilhin yung game mo, may mga games na silang nilalaro, right? So for us, the goal really was, when we chose this genre, we said, okay, this has a pretty good following of players from different regions, from the US, from Russia, from Brazil. So if we launch this same game or similar to that game, I'm pretty sure that these markets will be playing this game big time. And that's the other point that I wanted to make also. If you're building a story-driven game, it will pay to invest in some form of translation.
Localization.
Yes. So the translation to the big markets, I'm talking about Russia, because Russia is a very huge Steam market. China is also another market that you have to target. So just simplified Chinese. Brazil. So either have the game in Spanish or Brazilian Portuguese, but that's two different languages. So you have to be careful about that also. And then, if you really wanted to go big, you also have to do localized translation in Southeast Asia, which is
Bahasa,
Thai, Bahasa, Vietnamese, yun.
Singaporean English, hindi, joke lang. Okay.
Pero yun, but if you really had to choose between the big languages, kahit yung Russia and China lang, okay ka na
Magandang tip yan kasi
especially
if you're kung marami kang mga cutscenes, tapos marami kang mga
marami kang dialogue.
May dialogue ka sa games mo, kaya pala kumita si Flappy Bird, no? Kasi walang dialogue Alam mo na yan, alam mo nang mamamatay ka.
but that the story of Flappy Bird, that guy he was really lucky, because that was his 50-something game, right? 55th game, I think. Yeah, he created like a ton of quick games and put them up in the store. And lightning struck. One streamer saw his game, played it, and it snowballed from there. So that's the other marketing advice that I'd give a new studio. They said, if you can, work with local and international streamers. Give them a free copy of the game. Tell them, hey dude, this is a unique game. This is right up your alley. You might want to enjoy it. I hope you play it.
Palaro mo kala kala Gloco, yung mga
diba? Kahit sa local lang, it would be great. But just to get these local streamers to get that word out. Kasi ako, what I did for our game was, we attended game conferences. So we were at booths, so that yung mga indie booths, so people were actually able to play our game. As much as I could, I had interviews, or I asked publishers. I asked blogs or other online publishers to talk to me or interview me about our game. And then I also attended conferences. At saka para tipid, I attended local and regional conferences like sa Singapore.
Okay.
And then also, but you also have to identify if you're really serious about your game launching globally, and you think that you have a chance. There are very important shows that you have to go to, like PAX, GDC. Kahit isa lang sa mga yun in 1 year, in the year. Makapunta ka, makasama ka sa Indiecade, for example, or sa Indie Showcase. Yun lang, makasama ka lang dun, malaki na yung chance na makilala ka, ma-pick up yung game.
Networking, no?
Oo. And then the rest of it is really just done online. You join a lot of communities, you do a lot of social media, Twitter. You post a lot of screenshots, videos.
So maganda. Kaya ito yung mga networking is like free marketing na rin, di ba?
Yeah. I mean, a conference isn't free. But
naman.
If you're lucky enough, a lot of these conferences kasi, they make parang open audition, so to speak. So what you do is, you look for these things, and then they will say, submit your game here, and then if we choose you, we will give you a pass for free. Pero yun na lang, pass lang. So kailangan mo pa rin ng airfare. Pero maraming conferences. There are conferences in Japan, Taiwan. So
itong upcoming conference dito sa Philippines, the ESGS, will you guys be a part of that too?
Not this year.
Not this year.
We wanted to, pero wala pa kaming mapapakitang bago from 2 years ago. So parang it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Pero yeah, definitely. If you can get yourself invited, or if you join and then you're lucky enough to be included as a winner, libre yun eh. All you have to do is just sign up just get in there. So if you have a game that's already ready or midway to finish, tapos meron ka na mapapakita,
pwede may showcase,
to join, Kung may makita ka mga sign up, mag-sign up ka. Marami yan eh. Marami sa US, marami sa Japan, all over. Tapos kung bahala na yung airfare kung merong umuha, di ba?
Jan.
Yung audience namin is usually from 13 to 25. Well, mostly are students or starting at work. So how would you advise them when they have an idea? Of course, they can't join conferences. Kasi I'm sure they can't afford pa yung mga to go to other places para lang ipakita yung
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, if you're a fresh grad, my advice is don't go into business muna. If you really want to start your own studio, make sure you have the funding and the connections. Kasi if you start right after graduation and then gawa ka kagad ng studio, ang problem dun is, and this is me in hindsight, because after college, I went into business with a friend kagad. Hindi mo pa na-develop yung corporate culture, the learnings, even the network, hindi mo pa na-build. So, mahirap maging successful right out of the gate, right? And as gagastos ka pa for a conference or a trip, lalo na. Diba? So my advice is, especially if you're starting out, unless you're already aware of the basics or you were taught the basics of having to run a studio in school, I advise you to work for a studio, a big studio first, at the very least, to understand how things work, what tools they use, schedules, production timelines, etc., etc. Para lang matutunan mo yung disciplines.
Grow your roots, no?
To run this. Yeah. Kasi a lot of the studios that I met along the way that were just kids who just got into it, ang daming kulang ang daming kulang dun sa back end. I mean, the talent is there, sure, why not? But if they didn't have any proper mentorship, somebody to guide them on what to do, a lot of it would just be wasted time, wasted
correct.
effort.
Kumbaga parang sa sa restaurant industry, bago ka magtayo ng restaurant mo, matuto ka muna maghugas ng pinggan. Kasi, di ba, that's how you started, di ba? Parang bago ka maging chef, doon ka muna sa pinakahuling line, magugas ka ng pinggan until you reach maging sous chef ka, yung ganyan, o tagahiwa ka na ng vegetables, yung ganyan. Bago ka maging head chef, tsaka magtayo ng sarili mong restaurant.
Exactly. So part of that learning is, if you had that understanding already of running a studio, then you also know when the right time to attend a conference abroad is. Kasi that's part of the marketing cost. Eh. So baka sabihin mo na, start pa lang tayo, tara, punta tayong GDC sa San Francisco. Ang gastos mo, airfare, hotel, passes, etc. Pero wala ka naman papakita. Diba? So parang nagsayang ka ng pera. So part of running the studio is also strategizing what conferences or shows you go to. So me and my partner, we also put that in our P&L, or profit and loss. So part of our projections, okay, so if we are expecting to start selling the game by this time, dapat nandito kami sa conference na to, sa conference na to, sa conference na to. So it was all strategic. It wasn't just because we knew there was a game conference going that you would also be there. Hindi, you have to pick and choose which ones you go to and manage the cost. Kasi, if you just because there is a game conference, and I'm saying right now as an advice na, you also have to attend the conference, napupuntahan mo lahat eh. Hindi, you have to strategize also the most efficient way to promote your game and your studio. And to be perfectly honest, if you had just gotten out of college, a lot of these things you'd think were important and gagawin mo lahat. Pupuntahan mo lahat. You'd spend for all of the marketing. Kasi hindi mo pa naintindihan gaano, or you weren't trained enough to prioritize or to divert your funds properly so that you'd have a much better chance of launching a successful game.
Correct. So what will you say to the, diba, to the people you're trying to network? You have nothing to show for pa, diba? So puro hubris lang ang lalabas yan.
Seriously, I've attended so many conferences where I meet a lot of kids, especially in the US. They'd be at GDC, they spend for the most expensive pass, and they're like in the networking parties. Oh, I just graduated. I'm just here. I'm trying to see what I can learn from this conference, see if I can. And I'm like, fuck it, man. You just wasted a lot of money. I mean, sure, you're networking, quote unquote, but if you didn't have a specific plan on how to do it, diba, it would have been hindi ka nag-attend ng right conference or talks, for example, or nagpunta ka lang, nag-ikot ka lang sa showcase floor, wala kang pinuntahang conference. So parang it was just a waste of money.
Correct.
But if you actually spent the time to understand, okay, what track do I want to attend? Should I invest more in the virtual reality tracks, or should I invest more on monetization?
Specific, no?
So it becomes more valuable. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, again, to go back to your question earlier, for any new guys who are coming into this, it doesn't matter really what you do for your marketing. What's important is that you do any of these things purposefully. That there's a reason why you do any of these conferences or marketing efforts or spending for Facebook advertising. Whatever the case may be, it's because you already studied it and you understand why you're doing this. May return siya para sa'yo. Right?
Correct. Okay, so eto, this was also discussed last episode. When it comes to mabalik tayo sa mga publisher decisions and everything, okay? So ngayon ang nauuso ngayon na medyo negative, other than pay to win, is yung including loot boxes in your kasi medyo mainit siya ngayon, di ba? So I mean, do you think there would be like a developer team or a studio that would think would be nice? Kasi on your end, you're both, di ba? So which side of you would be thinking na parang, ay, include natin loot boxes kasi Mukhang ano to eh. It's a game mechanic that would get people still wanting to log into your game. Eh.
And if this is usually on indie scene, or is this more of the bigger
AAA,
publishers?
AAA lang.
Okay, so the thing about loot boxes is, personally, I think they're okay because as long as the game itself informs you um, what you're supposed to get or what rewards you're getting, especially if the loot boxes are paid for, mind you. Kasi a lot of the games now, libre lang yung loot box. Eh. You just have to complete a certain set of pre-requirements. Like, kailangan mong mag-level up sa Overwatch, for example. Or sa Rainbow Six. If you nakachamba ka dun sa loot box
dun sa RNG nila.
Oo.
Roleta ng kapalaran yan eh. Pag nanalo ka.
Exactly. Pero yung ibang game kasi, kailangan mong bayaran. Yung loot box, dun tayo nagkakatalo. Kasi, especially if ang bayad ng loot box, and then you're given an award which is less than what you paid for, parang pucha, sugal yun, lugi naman ako.
Correct.
Dun ako hindi sakay. That's what I'm really up against. But if the loot box is part of the game mechanic, it's awarded you, and you can buy loot boxes because it, I don't want to have to grind for 50 loot boxes. I just want to spend it and unlock all of these skins. I'll go for it. Then that's fine. I mean, pera ko naman yun eh. Account ko naman yun. So, hayaan mo siya. The thing that a lot of people are uncomfortable with is because yun nga, sometimes the loot box mechanic is like gambling. Now, the more you spend, but wala ka nakukuhang maganda or wala ka nakukuhang return sa items.
Walang value, no?
Especially a lot of people who don't understand the value of a virtual item.
Virtual item.
Diba? Hindi ko naman to pwedeng iuwi sa bahay, pakita sa asawa ko, dito na punta yung sweldo ko. Hindi. Diba? So it's so how do you justify that? So for me, the reason why I'm okay with loot boxes is because a lot of them they don't interrupt with the game itself. So whether or not you get the loot box, you can still play the same game, right? And second, if you do get the loot box, you're given a lot of these items, and usually the items you get are great vanity items or unique items or stuff that you'd enjoy seeing. Ang best example ko pa rin talaga Overwatch because they give you the dance emotes, they give you the epic skins or the highlight videos, and you know, you don't have to spend. You just have to keep playing. Right? You get given a loot box, right? So, yun siya. Okay siya sa akin. Naiintindihan ko naman yung concern, especially that one. I forgot which country that was.
Belgium.
Belgium, yeah. It's because it does seem like it's gambling. So, a lot of the Chinese MMOs that we were looking at before were like that. As in, bibili ka ng loot box. Loot box for today. Ito yung chance ng items. Like, there's a 0.00005% chance na makuha mo ng super epic rare item. Diba? So, in order for you to get that item, bibili ka ng bibili. E paano kung nakagastos ka na ng 1 million yen? 1 million RMB kasi hindi mo pa nakukuha. Gastos ka pa rin ng 1 million hanggang sa makuha mo yung item. Diba? So for it's just like those arcade games sa mall. Yung crane, di ba? Every so often lang magiging mahigpit yung hawak ng crane. So bagsak ng coin, thinking na, makukuha ko ng stuff ko yun. Yun pala rigged na yung game. Di ba? So that's the thing that I'm really iffy about. That developers can rig
correct. Dapat hindi ganun.
Dapat hindi ganun. Dapat hindi siya naka-rig. Talagang nakaset yung tapos dasal ka na lang kay RNGesus. Ganun lang talaga.
Oo nga eh. Okay, so meron pa ako isang question dito na medyo sad question to eh. And I think you can feel this question because of yung status ngayon ng game niya and all. So, recently in the news, we've heard that Telltale Games actually closed down because of your funding and all that. What do you think yung, what do you call this, yung point where AAA developer like Telltale Games, well, I consider their games kasi AAA kasi maganda naman talaga, story-based and all that. So, where do you think it draws the line pag ganyan? Where do you think they made a mistake? I mean, just out of your experience pagdating sa publishing and everything. Kasi I think they're doing good. Nobody, I think, saw this coming. They have no plans for that many plans for like 2019 and all that. Pero I think they're heading there kasi yung mass layoffs na nangyari is ngayon parang maintenance mode na sila eh. So, on your opinion, what do you think happened to Telltale Games as a company?
I honestly think it was a case of they grew too fast and weren't able to sustain their profitability. Kasi, let's face it, your games are great, right? But you are competing in a market where it's a very cutthroat business. So many games coming out all the time. Plus, the tastes of the market, they change, and your game genre is actually a niche. It's a
niche kasi
point
siya
and click
Sobrang
storytelling
unique
game.
no?
Look at the games that are doing so well now. It's because these games are being streamed. They're multiplayer and so on and so forth. Yun yung trend eh. So, either you adapt or diba? Or you die. So, I think for them it was really a case of
naubusan sila ng
at a certain point, diba, mananawa rin yung audience mo na ganun ulit yung games mo. Alam ko na yung games mo. Maganda nga siya, pero teka muna, nag-Fortnite pa ako or something. Diba? It's and truth be told, the younger players now, a lot of the gamers now are spoiled eh. Hindi na nila gusto yung nag-iisip ng puzzle adventure games.
No?
Hindi na siya kasing tulad dati na paano ko yung unlock tong level ko sa Zelda? Hindi, gusto ko malaman kung paano tapusin yung game. Titingin ako sa YouTube, sino bang nakatapos sa tutorial.
Correct. Hindi na sila sa stuck no?
Ganun eh. Ganun siya eh.
Long time ago pa nga, wala pang YouTube eh.
Diba? So, talagang trial and error. Yung talagang 8 hours ka maglalaro, so mamatay ka sa ending, ulitin mo kung start.
Aantayin mo yung susunod na yung susunod na magazine ng Electronic Gaming Monthly. Bago makakita ng mga walkthrough eh.
I mean, it's sad. Honestly, it really hit in the gaming industry. It rocked us to the core.
Kasi nobody saw it coming. Telltale Games no?
That was doing so well for itself. They had some kick-ass titles and great IP. They had freaking Batman, Walking Dead, and Game of Thrones under their belt. Diba? How can you... And then biglang mag-mass layoff. And I was like, wow. That's the sad reality that one of the things that you have to realize is sobrang mahal ng studios pag nasa US ka. Running a studio in the West, either in anywhere in the US or in Canada, cost is so much higher.
Correct.
But if you had opened that studio in the Philippines, anak ng toba, ang mura lang ng overhead mo. Yun yung isa. Right? The second thing is, syempre, in order for you to maintain the amount of people you have and come up with new titles or new games, you obviously have to spend more. So I wonder how much they spent for the license to use Batman. To use Game of Thrones. Mahal nun. Yeah, it wasn't cheap.
The Walking Dead pa, no?
But they got it. Diba? So they got it and they did very well. Pero siguro, they weren't able to pay it all off. Right? Kasi every year, magbabayad ka ng royalties sa
Oo
mga
nga
yan.
eh.
So, aside from the royalties that you're paying for great IP, you also have to pay for your people, you have to pay for your studio, your electricity, your licenses. Ang dami mong binabayaran. At the end of the day, you start looking, oh shit man, we're not profitable anymore. We're bleeding money. So that's the reality of it. Because you grew too fast, you got all these great IP, you grew to a big studio, 100 plus people. Eventually, hindi na nasusustain ng revenue. And don't forget, the game is game is premium eh. Once you buy the game,
Tapos na,
tapos na. Oh, but if the game were free to play, can you imagine dadagdag ka ng extra money and now you can play as another character. Now you can play as Michonne.
Kaya lang, ang ano nga, ginawa na rin nila yan eh. I think they did it with Game of Thrones where they released it episodic pero hindi pa rin nag-work, di ba?
Episodic siya pero pag binayaran mo ng full, you get the whole thing. I'm talking about a real free-to-play mechanic like a Fortnite. The reason why Fortnite is doing so well is because even if it's a AAA studio, because it's free to play and they keep releasing new content and people keep buying the new content, meron silang pambayad sa mga tao nila.
Correct.
Guys, you can keep creating new stuff because we still have money to pay you. So, yun. And the fact that it's their own IP, I don't have to pay royalties to the creators of Walking Dead or to DC or whatever.
Sayang eh, no?
So marami. I mean,
hindi ka naman kasi makakita ng Telltale Battle Royale eh, no? So wala, hindi na sila nakikita.
Although if they did have, I would play the shit out of that.
Story based na Battle Royale. Oh wait lang, meron akong conversation point sa'yo. Wait lang.
Thanks.
Sige dyan.
We're talking about Telltale, diba? Which is super niche. Now, diba, when there's a new mechanic that's super popular, nagiging bandwagon naman ngayon. Like, I saw a new game na they're mashing up MOBA plus Battle Royale na there's a circle going smaller. So, I mean, diba? There's a danger din when studios just go into the bandwagon, or is it advisable din?
Bubble to eh, di ba? Bubble eh. Battle Royale bubble to eh.
I mean, it's because nakita nila yung potential. I mean, they've seen how big, let's say when PUBG first came, and it wasn't actually the first Battle Royale, right? It's just the one that did much better than everyone else, and the one that everyone was streaming. And then along comes these other battle royales, and no one's budging PUBG off its pedestal. And then Fortnite comes in and says, you know what? Fuck it, we'll do it our way. But it's still battle royale, right? And then they got lucky with all of the streamers coming in, plus that celebrity endorsement, and boom, you're the number one stream game on Twitch. I don't see any problem with quote unquote bandwagoning as long as you do it right. Don't bandwagon for the sake of bandwagoning. Say, may feature sila ganito, dapat tayo din. Hindi eh. There has to be thought behind why you did that, why you're putting in that mode. Kasi everyone else wanted to be PUBG, but Fortnite wanted to be Fortnite.
Correct.
That's the difference.
But do you think, because with all these games coming out, do you think it's a pressure? Because I don't think the developing side or the studios are affected by this trend. Pero do you think, because the publishers have the money, do you think the pressure is coming from a publisher? Particularly right now, as big as a game, as big as a publisher, as Activision Blizzard, with Black Ops 4, which is hindi naman natin ina-expect na bigla silang pupunta doon sa ganun. So do you think this is a pressure coming from the publishers themselves na parang hindi kailangan mo magkaroon ng Battle Royale kasi
I think
nandun
it's
yung
more
pera.
it's more Black Ops is a great game, by the way. We played beta.
Ang ganda talaga, maganda.
Sobra. But anyway, I digress. The thing is, I'm pretty sure the direction came from higher up. They said that, okay, these games are doing well right now. There's a shit ton of streamers coming in. There's a lot of esports potential. There's a lot of marketing dollars coming in. We need to be in this space. Ganun lang kasi.
So there's this one guy in the meeting na parang
quote unquote, there's pressure from the higher ups. But of course, everybody has to review that. Everybody studies it. The big studios, they don't just go in and say, "Oh, sige, gawa rin tayo yan." Inaaral din nila yan. They understand. Okay, how big a team do we need? How much time will we need to build this game? Can we do it? And then they look at the numbers. If the numbers show na kaya, they'll go for it. If they see that there's still space, they'll go for it. The thing about Black Ops is the reason why I loved it so much, because they were trying to fill in the space between hyper-realistic shooter with a Fortnite vibe. So it's easy to pick up and difficult to master, but everything is based on realism.
I've also played that. Medyo, sabi ko nga the only the good move that they have to do there for Activision Blizzard is they have to make yung Blackout, because I think it's called Blackout, right?
Yeah.
So they have to make the Blackout free, because if you purchase the game and if you just want to play Blackout, medyo magkakaroon ng parang paywall when the rest of the like Fortnite is free and everything, and it's the biggest game right now when it comes to Battle Royale. So I mean, all these games have to do, all Fortnite has to do is like, edi mag-i-introduce kami ng maganda rin na kasi they're inspired right now because they're raking so much money. So parang, di ba? Madali na lang convincing yung mga developers, lagay mo nga ito ng ganito para lang matalo natin yung
that's very true. Yeah.
Di ba? So
like the thing I loved about Black Ops is that there's for example, there are helicopters, right? And your entire squad can ride a helicopter. And then on the flip side, somebody can pick up a freaking heat-seeking rocket launcher and take you all out. So it's not difficult for Fortnite to say, okay, if you guys are gonna do that, then we'll introduce helicopters and we'll introduce heat-seeking rocket launcher. No problem. You're right. So I think it's they have to be able to do something unique and truly part of that Black Ops experience, and at the same time keep it free.
Make it free kasi nga yun yung trend and just rank up kasi Activision Blizzard I think is open for that. They're capable enough company. They're still raking millions out of WoW. It's still running. Up to this time, millions of players are still paying $15 a month. Diba? For what? For what content? You're done with the content. You're just making expansions. Yun lang yung money maker. Pero yun talaga yung kumukuha ng pera. And you can make games like this. This game will also take off. This game will also make money. Black Ops 4 is considered, let's say, people are going to get into it better than the controversy that Battlefield 5 is getting, di ba? So parang mas makukuha nila yung mga players and all that. And by making it free, you'll even get the Fortnite players. Kasi all you need to do is convince Ninja and the others to actually move.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
Diba? And you've got you've got a jackpot na.
You can still have a paid game experience. Just like Fortnite, yung Save the World mode nila is paid, right? So you have to buy that version of the game, and so it's fine. But if you want to play the Battle Royale, it's free. So you're right. If they want to go that route, it would be a good idea for them to keep the Battle Royale mode Blackout free. But if you wanted to play the zombie mode or the original game, that's the paid version. That's what you have to buy.
Okay. So recently, recently here in the Philippines. So this is a AAA publisher na just released in the Philippines. So do you think um, is it right now the dawn of Philippine local gaming, or do you think this is just like an offshoot of just one publisher? Do you think we're actually getting traction ngayon? Kasi nga, we already know that we have great developers here. We have great artists. We have the talent. Marami namang Pilipino dyan na nag-overseas pa para lang mag-develop ng games and all that. May courses din ngayon sa Lasal that would offer game developing and all that. So, do you think we're already starting a trend to a golden age of local gaming, or ano ba to? One off lang ba to, or what?
I think we're already there. We're at the cusp of what we'd like to refer to as gaming renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at it right now. Esports is already gaining mainstream attention.
Mm-hmm.
There were some big tournaments already hosted here in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
You already have some regionally and globally known local streamers who are getting a lot of audience views as well.
Correct.
And there are also companies and advertisers who are willing to invest in the gaming space now. Globe, for example, has already created a partnership with AOV and League so that they have a much stronger esports footprint in the Philippines. And then in terms of the development side, the the membership size of GDAP, or the Game Developers Association of the Philippines, is already at its highest. ESGS, the indie game arm of ESGS, is already getting much bigger and super crowded, which means there are a lot more studios and indie studios in the Philippines already coming up. And more and more individual studios are already becoming renowned, not just in the country, but also in the region. Some of the guys that I've worked with before are already getting some awards from the games that they've launched. And each studio has their own unique type of game or niche. Right? So, for example, Yang Yang Games, Yang Yang Mobile, the first game that they launched was so successful on Kickstarter and did very well on their Steam launch that when they kickstarted their second visual novel game, it was funded in a matter of days. Like I think 2 days, would fund the game. So, ang ganda na ng environment. All you have to do, really, is to figure out what your game would be, and then make sure that you market your game to that niche.
So,
and once you do, there's a very strong chance that if you launch on Steam, you have a pretty good following.
Would you say that is there other support services, or I don't know what the word is, that needs to be in place so that in the game industry, local game industry would be boosted higher? I don't.
I think we're already in a pretty good place. We already have some pretty good government support. There are already 2 very active organizations in the country that is supporting independent game development and studios. And even in the education space, universities like Ateneo and LaSalle are already teaching courses in game development and game design. So I really, the only thing that's missing is I think more mentorship, more people who have had successful studios to teach the kids, to teach the upcoming studios, to tell them what to do. guys who have failed, like me, who are already in the space but didn't launch, but know exactly where you guys should do or what to do, so that you don't make the same mistakes I did. You know, things like that. I think is what we need more, and we have that. I'm pretty sure if you ask, all you have to do is ask. A lot of these communities already have these mentors in place. Just reach out, man. If you're a budding studio and you want to set up, if you don't know if you're doing it right, I mean, just reach out to the guys in the GDAP or the IGDA. So many people will be there to help you out. It's a very close-knit community, and that's what I'm very happy to say. It's even if it's a growing industry in the Philippines, it's still actually pretty tight knit because a lot of people know everyone else. Most of the studios have friends in other studios. A lot of the people who teach in the universities are also very familiar with everybody else. So it's a very close knit community. So it's not that hard to ask for help, man. If you really want to get into this, there's so much in terms of resources that can get you there.
Last, sorry.
Go.
It's good that it looks all set up. But for me, I didn't know that there was already an association, and there were studios already that's already successful. Would you say what's lacking? Letting the masses that's not focused on the gaming industry for them to realize that we have this na pala.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I guess that would require a lot more involvement with local media, and of course, somebody really championing the local game development course and really going out there and telling everyone or talking about it on social media, sharing the videos. You know what I mean? Kasi right now it's, syempre, if there's news about the studio, kanya-kanya yan. And then, i-share na lang nila sa network nila, uy, na-feature ako sa GMA or nasa unang hirit ako ngayon. Mga ganon. But syempre, hindi pa ganun kalaki yung groundswell, right? And I understand where you're coming from. Parang, it's very true that not everyone has heard of these associations or seen that we're already doing so well. So I guess more involvement by the local media to really bring it up to the top, let it rise outside of the noise and just and I guess that's one of the things that Globe is trying to accomplish with their new endeavors. They're partnering with some local production and broadcasting studios to make it happen. Hopefully, it's going to work and people are going to pay more attention to it.
Yeah.
But
we're going to be part of those group of people that will let let everyone know that such an organization exists. And and you guys are as helpful as you promised. And you guys are a tight-knit group and all that. So I think they'll expect that. So
So again, if you're interested to seek for advice from these communities, all you have to do is look for GDAP on Facebook, which is the Game Developers Association of the Philippines, as well as the IGDA, or Independent Game Developers Association of the Philippines. Both communities are very active, and a lot of people there will be glad to help you out if you want to start getting into setting up your own studio, looking for help, maybe finding a way to talk to a publisher or an investor. And even then, individuals out there from the other studios that are doing well. One of my favorite cases right now is Altitude Games. These are my friends from as far back as high school. And these guys are doing so well in the mobile game space right now. So much so that they were able to set up a new company called Alto.io, which is now the way cryptocurrency for games. So they're bringing cryptocurrency into free-to-play gaming. And the founder and CEO of Altitude Games, Gabby Dizon, is one of the guys who helped me, gave me advice when I was starting up my studio as well. And I'm very sure he'd be more than happy to help out all of these other studios who want to set up and figure out what they want to do, where to go. If you check out their games, Altitude Games is doing so well on the App Store right now. They have a couple of games that are up now that are doing very well. One is Dream Defense, and the other is Kung Fu something. I forgot the full title. Kung Fu Clicker, I think. Kung Fu Clicker. Sobrang ganda niya, pare. You should try it out. It's a mobile game.
Oh, Kung Fu Clicker, Yeah. Masyado nakaka-addict yan.
Sobra.
Malut box ako dyan,
But these are the guys who really understand, free-to-play gaming, creating that core loop with the revenue model and all of that. It's really, really good.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear, man. So, okay. Any final word for anyone, again, that's interested? I know we've learned a lot from you, Iggy, and if there's any other thing that you want to share for those who are interested, maybe someone who just graduated or trying to graduate, hindi niya alam saan ba ako pupunta dito. So, anything that you want to say as a final word?
Well, so aside from the communities that I shared earlier, I would have to say, if you really are serious about getting into this, just reach out to any of the guys from these communities and just feel free to ask the questions about if you think I'm doing this right, or how should I set up my studio, will my game do well, etc., etc. Do your homework, basically. It really pays to research and to understand the space that you're coming into, because sure, it's about making games, but at the end of the day, it's also about how well you understand the industry, because you can make great games, but if it's a great game just for you, and you weren't really trying to figure out if anybody else would play it, or it would be sustainable, it would make money. I'm just making games because it's an art and stuff like that. Then, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe sure you can make a game, but it's not really it's not a lifelong passion or a dream. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But if you really want it to be a successful business venture, do the homework, and we'll help you figure out how to make it work.
That's true.
But just to add to that, I'm not saying that if you wanted to make your dream project just for the heck of it, that not to do it. If you can, by all means, go for it. If there is a dream game that you've been wanting to make since you were a child, which is my case, I just go for it. Just do it, man. But remember, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
It really does require all of that hard work and homework.
Nothing is.
If it were easy, everyone would be doing it.
Correct. Diba? Okay, so that's about it. Any other questions you have, John?
No, I'm good.
All right, so that's about it. Thank you very much, Iggy. And we'll make sure to actually inform everyone how informative this episode is. Ang dami namin natutunan ngayon. Baka mamaya gumawa na ako ng game studio dyan. Okay, so that's our episode. That's our 10th episode for today. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and give it out on the comments and all that. Any other suggestions you want to have us, we're here to listen. All right, so that's it. You have a great day, and wag puro kalaro.